Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought living alone in a small house would make me paranoid. For most of my adult life, I valued solitude. I worked from home, paid my bills on time, and kept to myself. That was enough for me. My name is Ethan Morales, and about a year ago I bought a modest 2-bedroom house on a quiet street in Wilmot, Pennsylvania, a suburban area where nothing much ever happens. My office was set up in the upstairs room that overlooked the front yard and driveway. I liked it that way because I could open the window for fresh air or look out whenever I wanted a break from staring at my screen. I told myself it was the perfect setup: peace, fresh air, and a view of a sleepy little neighborhood. But what happened that autumn made me see the house and the world outside my window very differently. It was a Tuesday, early October, and the leaves had just started changing. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through editing a project for a client, when I caught something in the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was just one of the neighbors walking their dog, but when I looked more closely, I realized it wasn't that at all. There was a man standing at the bottom of my driveway, not walking, not passing by, not fumbling with his phone, just standing there. He looked to be in his mid-40s, wearing a gray hoodie pulled halfway up, with jeans that hung loosely on his frame. He wasn't doing anything except staring up toward my house. I froze. "Can he see me?" I whispered to myself. My desk was right by the open window, the blinds halfway drawn. Maybe I was visible. Maybe not. The man stood there for only a few seconds, but it was long enough to make my stomach knot. Then he simply turned and walked away, down the street, disappearing past the corner. I leaned back in my chair and let out a nervous laugh. Probably just some guy lost, or waiting for someone, I muttered. I wanted to believe that, but something about the stillness of him just standing there didn't feel right. That night I mentioned it on the phone to my younger sister, Maria, who lived in Philadelphia. "Ethan, that's creepy as hell," she said. "Did you get a good look at him?" "Not really. Just a hoodie, jeans, nothing unusual." He walked off. "Still, don't shrug it off. You live alone. You need to be careful." I told her she was being dramatic, but truthfully, I went to bed that night with the curtains drawn tighter than usual. The next day, I was buried in back-to-back video calls. Around 1 in the afternoon, while my coworker Ryan was rambling about deadlines, I glanced outside again. My blood ran cold. The same man was standing in the exact same spot at the end of my driveway. This time I could tell he was looking directly at my window. I must have gone pale because Ryan's voice on the call cut through. "Ethan, you good? You look like you just saw a ghost." Yeah, sorry, just got distracted," I stammered. I tried to keep my eyes on the meeting, but every few seconds I glanced back. The man didn't move. Then suddenly, when I looked back again, he was gone. That second sighting ate at me the rest of the day. By the time evening came, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I called Maria again. "Same guy," I said. "Same spot. Just standing there." "Ethan, call the cops," she urged. What am I supposed to say? "Hey, officer, there's a guy standing outside." He didn't do anything. Standing there is doing something. It's intimidation. It's creepy as hell. At least log it with them. I promised I'd think about it, but of course I didn't. That night, while making dinner, I walked outside just to check. From the end of the driveway, I realized something I hadn't before. My office window was perfectly visible from where he stood. If he looked up, he could see me working, and I couldn't shake the thought that maybe that was the whole point. 2 nights later, I was watching TV around 9 p.m. The volume was low because I was getting tired. That's when I heard it. Faint footsteps crunching across the gravel near my front door. My body froze. The steps paused briefly, then continued, fading toward the road. Heart pounding, I rushed to the door and peered out the peephole. I could barely make out a figure walking away. When they disappeared into the dark, I opened the door, stupid, I know, and that's when I saw it. A note taped to the wood. I pulled it off with shaking hands. It was only 4 words. "Ethan, answer the door." The fact that they knew my name made my skin crawl. I called the police immediately. 2 officers showed up. I explained everything. The man at the driveway, the staring, the note. They jotted everything down but didn't offer much reassurance. "If it happens again, call us right away," one of them said. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made me jump. At exactly 1:58 a.m., it came. A knock at the front door. I sat up in bed, paralyzed, the silence of the house amplifying the sound. Then came another knock, steady, calm. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. As I whispered into the phone, the knocking continued. Not loud, not frantic, just patient. The operator said officers were 2 minutes away. The knocking slowed. 15 seconds between, then 30, then silence. When the cops arrived, the porch was empty. No one in sight. This time, the officers seemed to take it more seriously. They promised to patrol the neighborhood for the next couple of weeks. But the damage was done. I couldn't relax in my own house anymore. For 2 weeks, I lived in paranoia. I checked the window constantly. I jumped at every sound. The police patrols comforted me a little, but I knew they couldn't watch forever. And then, nothing. No knocks, no notes, no man at the driveway. By Thanksgiving, I started convincing myself it was over. Maybe he moved on. Maybe it really was nothing. But deep down, I never forgot. One night in February, nearly 4 months later, I was working late. Around midnight, I stood up to stretch and glanced out the window. My stomach dropped. There he was. Same hoodie, same spot, same stillness. But this time he was holding something. A small, rectangular object. I couldn't tell what it was. I backed away from the window, heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't call the cops this time. For some reason, I was too afraid that if I did, he'd know. I just sat on the floor of my office, phone clutched in my hand, waiting. After a few minutes, when I finally worked up the courage to peek again, he was gone. But the next morning when I went outside, I found something lodged into the dirt at the end of my driveway. It was a photograph of me, sitting at my desk, taken from the window. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just being paranoid. This man wasn't just watching. He was inside my yard. He had come close enough to take that picture. I called the police again. This time, they sent a detective. "Do you have any enemies? Anyone who'd want to mess with you?" he asked. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I keep to myself. I work from home. I barely know my neighbors." He studied the photo, his jaw tight. "This isn't random. Whoever he is, he wants you to know he's watching." The detective promised extra patrols and advised me to install cameras. I did. I bought a whole security system that same day. But a sick feeling in my gut told me it wouldn't be enough. It happened a week later. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to an alert from my phone. Motion detected in the front yard. I opened the camera app with shaking hands. The live feed showed him. The man in the hoodie, standing at the bottom of the driveway. He tilted his head up, staring directly into the camera lens. And then, slowly, he raised his hand. He was holding a piece of paper. He lifted it high enough for the camera to catch the words. "Let me in." I bolted upright in bed, dialing 911 as fast as I could. The operator assured me officers were on the way. I kept my eyes glued to the screen. But when the flashing lights finally appeared down the road, the man was gone again. The officers combed the area, but found nothing. The detective told me, "You might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while, just until we figure this out." So I packed a bag and left. I stayed at Maria's apartment in the city for a month. When I finally returned, the neighborhood felt different. I didn't feel safe in my own home anymore. It's been almost a year since the last sighting. No more notes, No more knocking, no more photographs. But every time I sit at my desk by the window, I can't help but glance at the end of the driveway. Because the scariest part isn't what happened, it's that I don't know if he's really gone, or if he's just waiting. I grew up in a place that most people today would probably call too quiet for comfort. It was a small town called Millfield, tucked between long stretches of pine forests and winding dirt roads that seemed to lead nowhere. If you blinked while driving through, you might miss it entirely. Most people in Millfield either worked at the lumber yard, the feed mill, or one of the small hardware shops that lined Main Street. There wasn't much else to do, which is probably why most kids my age couldn't wait to leave. My family lived on the outskirts, far from town, on a patch of land that my grandfather had bought back in the 1960s. My dad, Richard, had built the house with his own father, just a modest two-story place with gray siding and a creaky porch that looked out toward acres of woods. My mom, Elaine, loved to garden, so she had her flower beds lined up along the porch and little stepping stones leading out to her greenhouse. The only downside to living there was the isolation. Our driveway wasn't really a driveway at all. It was a dirt trail, barely wide enough for one car, snaking through the trees and eventually spitting you out on the county road. No school bus ever came down that trail. That meant if I wanted to get to school, I had to walk a mile up to my friend Kyle's place, or just keep walking straight into town, which was about 2.5 miles away. Most days I walked the whole way. It wasn't so bad in the mornings. The woods had a calming rhythm of their own. Birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, sometimes deer stepping cautiously out of the brush. I'd grown up with it, so it didn't feel eerie. Not yet. Back then, I was a freshman in high school, 14, still trying to figure myself out. I wasn't exactly popular, but I wasn't invisible either. I had a few close friends I kept to myself, and for the most part, life was simple. That was until the morning I saw her. It was late September, one of those crisp mornings when you could see your breath in the air, but the sun hadn't burned away the chill yet. I had my backpack slung over one shoulder and was walking down the trail like always when I noticed something up ahead. A car. Not my dad's old Ford, not Mom's sedan, just a beat-up silver Toyota I'd never seen before, parked right in the middle of the trail. At first I thought maybe it was a hunter who'd gotten lost or someone pulling off the county road for a smoke, but the trail only went one way, straight to our house. Nobody ended up here by accident. Inside the car was a woman. She looked mid to late 30s, maybe older. Her black hair was stringy and unkempt, hanging in her face. The first thing I noticed were her eyes, dark circles underneath like she hadn't slept in days. She was just sitting there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring out the windshield. When I walked past, she turned her head toward me. I kept my eyes down, pretending not to notice, but I could feel it. Her gaze locked on me. I picked up my pace, heart thumping a little faster. That evening, sitting at the dinner table, I told my parents about it. Some car was parked out on the trail this morning. There was a woman inside. She looked weird. Dad froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. What kind of car? Silver. Old. I didn't recognize it. What did she do? Nothing, just looked at me. Mom glanced at Dad, her face tight. Probably lost. People take wrong turns all the time. Not on that trail, Dad muttered. His jaw flexed. That trail's ours. I noticed the way they exchanged glances, both worried, though they tried to hide it. The next morning, instead of me walking, Dad drove me to school before heading to work. Same thing the rest of that week. Mom even called in late one day just to drive me. I remember thinking it was an overreaction. But then, the following Monday, I found out it wasn't. It had been a week since I'd last seen her. No strange cars, no unfamiliar faces. By then, I figured it had been nothing. Just some random person who got turned around in the woods. So that Monday, I told my parents I'd walk. Dad hesitated, but eventually nodded. Fine, but don't dawdle. Straight to school, you hear me? I left early, enjoying the cold air and the crunch of leaves under my boots. For a while, it was just peaceful silence, until I got close to the spot where I'd seen the car before. And there she was again. Same car, same woman, same exact spot. My chest tightened. My legs wanted to stop moving, but I forced myself to keep walking. This wasn't coincidence. Twice at the same time, same place. She wasn't lost. She was waiting. I slowed down, then made a split-second decision. Instead of walking past her car, I veered off the trail into the woods. My dad always said the land was ours for miles. I knew I could circle back around and avoid her. But the second I stepped into the trees, I heard it. The rumble of her engine starting. I didn't look back. I just walked faster, my heart racing. Leaves crunched behind me, and then her car door slammed. She was following me. I could hear her footsteps, and then, clear as day, I heard her voice call out, "Daniel." My blood ran cold. She'd said my full name. How did she know my name? I risked a glance over my shoulder. She was there, just a few yards behind, stepping into the trees. Her face was pale, expression blank, like all the life had drained from it. Her eyes, God, her eyes, looked hollow, almost glassy, like she wasn't really present. "Daniel," she said again, her tone soft, almost loving. I bolted. Branches whipped against my arms, my backpack snagging on thorns as I sprinted deeper into the woods. I didn't stop until I was sure I'd lost her. I looped around wide, cutting back toward home, and when I finally burst out of the tree line into our backyard, I was gasping for air. I called my parents from the house phone. Within 15 minutes, they were home, their faces pale as I told them what happened. What shocked me wasn't that they believed me. It was that they already knew who she was. That night, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. His hands shook as he rubbed his forehead. "You need to understand something, Danny," he said. "That woman, she's someone I used to know, a long time ago." Mom placed a hand on his. "She doesn't need all the details." But Dad shook his head. "He does, he deserves to know." He looked me in the eye. "Her name is Marissa. She was my first wife." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. You were married before Mom?" He nodded. "It was short, barely 2 years. She wasn't well. She had these episodes, obsessions, fixations. Back then, the doctors didn't have a good way to help her. When things got bad, she scared me. She scared everyone." Mom's eyes welled with tears. "She disappeared after the divorce. We hadn't heard from her in decades. Until now." I swallowed hard. "So, why is she here? Why me?" Dad's voice dropped, heavy. "Because when she left, she swore she'd come back. She told me she'd take what was mine." The police were called. They came out, took my statement, promised to keep an eye out. When they visited Marissa, they claimed she was calm, coherent, and cooperative. To them, it looked like I was exaggerating, but she didn't stop. Over the next 2 weeks, we'd catch glimpses, her car parked down the county road, her figure standing in the tree line near our property at dusk. Once, Kyle swore he saw someone outside the high school fence just watching me. At night, I'd wake up to strange sounds outside my window, branches snapping, gravel crunching, and sometimes whispers. My parents tried to shield me, but I could see it tearing them apart. Mom slept with the phone by her bed. Dad started keeping his rifle loaded by the door. I was afraid to walk anywhere alone, afraid to close my eyes at night. It all came to a head one night in late October. The air was colder, the days shorter. Dad was working late, Mom was in the kitchen cleaning up, and I was upstairs trying to finish homework when I heard it. A soft tap on my window. I froze. My room overlooked the side yard, 2 stories up. No tree branches reached that high. Slowly, I turned my head. And there she was, Marissa. Standing on the roof of the porch, her face pressed against the glass, staring in at me. "Daniel," she whispered, her lips moving soundlessly against the pane. I screamed. Mom came running, just in time to see her vanish back into the night. Dad came barreling home minutes later, and the police were called again. But by the time they searched, she was gone. That was the last time I ever saw her. The police finally filed a restraining order, but she disappeared from Millfield after that night. Some said she moved 2 towns over. Some said she was institutionalized. My parents never told me the full truth. Maybe they didn't know either. But even now, years later, when I walk through the woods, I sometimes catch myself glancing over my shoulder. Sometimes when I hear leaves crunch behind me, I half expect to see her face again, because the way she said my name, so calm, so certain, it felt less like a threat and more like a promise. I was 24 when I moved to Millstone, a quiet town tucked between farmland and an aging industrial district. It wasn't the kind of place people moved for opportunity. Most either grew up there and stayed, or left as soon as they could. I ended up there because it was cheap, and because I needed to get away from the city I grew up in. My name's Daniel Reyes. I'd graduated from a state college the year before with a communications degree that didn't seem to open any doors, and after a short stint working as a warehouse temp, I finally landed a steadier job at a supermarket called Franklin's Market. The pay wasn't great, but it was consistent, and they gave me enough closing shifts that I could afford my tiny 1-bedroom apartment on Elmwood Avenue. The apartment itself wasn't much: peeling paint on the ceiling, old carpeting that smelled faintly of smoke no matter how many times I cleaned it, and thin walls that let me hear my neighbors arguing late into the night. But it was mine, and after living with roommates who never paid their share, I craved that solitude. Working at Franklin's became routine fast. I wasn't much of a talker, but the other cashiers were friendly enough. Most of the time I closed alone, though. 10 o'clock sharp, the lights would dim, the music would stop, and I'd spend 15 minutes wiping down my register before clocking out. It was repetitive but safe, until it wasn't. There were plenty of regulars at Franklin's, older women who came for coupons, families who stocked up on weekends, but there was one man everyone seemed to know without ever knowing his name. He'd come in late, always right before closing, maybe once or twice a week. Tall, mid-30s, pale. He had a kind of worn-out face, the kind of look that made you wonder if he ever slept. He never bought much, usually just a few random things like a carton of eggs, some bread, a 6-pack of cheap beer, and he never talked beyond a quiet "thanks" when I handed him his receipt. Most of the other employees rolled their eyes when they saw him. "The 950 guy's back," my manager Marissa once muttered when she spotted him walking in the door. We all hated last-minute shoppers. They didn't seem to care that we were just trying to get out on time. But something about him stuck with me more than the others. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Not in an obvious creepy way, but in this drained, unreadable way. His eyes would meet mine just a little too long when I greeted him. I'd brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking it. It was a Tuesday in early October, a chilly evening with mist crawling over the pavement outside. I was working the closing shift as usual. Around 9:50, just like always, he walked in. I remember the way the bell over the door jingled, echoing through the nearly empty store. He didn't hurry, didn't look around like he was pressed for time, just calmly walked the aisles, picked up a few things, and made his way to me. "Evening," I said as I started scanning his items. He nodded slightly, no smile, no small talk, just silent. He handed me cash, his fingers pale and cold when they brushed mine. "Have a good night," I offered as he left. He didn't reply, just walked out into the darkness. By 10:10, I'd locked the doors, cleaned up, and clocked out. The parking lot was mostly empty, just my old Corolla sitting under the single flickering lamppost. I shoved my backpack over my shoulder and started walking. That's when I noticed him. He was still there, standing by his car a few rows away. Not sitting inside it, just standing outside, hands at his sides, staring toward the store. I froze for a second, unsure if I should wave or just ignore him. He didn't move, didn't glance my way, just stood there like a shadow against the mist. I quickly got into my car, locked the doors, and drove off. My heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe his car wouldn't start. Maybe he was just tired. I didn't know then how wrong I was. I got home around 10:30. My place was only 10 minutes from the store tucked behind a row of duplexes. I heated up some leftovers, played a few rounds of a video game, and by midnight I was scrolling on my phone in bed. I left the blinds in my bedroom half open so I could see the streetlight outside. I liked the faint glow. It made the place feel less lonely. Around 1 a.m., just as I was dozing off, a bright light filled the room. It was harsh, sweeping through my window like headlights. I sat up, thinking a neighbor was pulling into their driveway. The light cut off suddenly, leaving me blinking in the dark. I waited a moment, but when nothing else happened, I shrugged it off. Just someone parking, I told myself. I went to bed. I don't know what woke me first, the sound or just a feeling, but sometime in the night I stirred, my heart thudding before I was even fully conscious. I thought I heard my phone vibrating, but when I grabbed it from the nightstand, the screen was black. No missed calls, no texts. That's when I noticed the door. My bedroom door was cracked open. Not wide, just a sliver, enough to break the line of the frame. I always closed my door before bed. Always. The latch worked fine. Seeing it like that jolted me awake faster than any alarm. I got out of bed slowly, my legs shaky, and pressed the door shut. It clicked into place like normal. No reason it should have been open. I stood there, every nerve buzzing, trying to convince myself there was an explanation. Maybe I hadn't shut it all the way. Maybe the draft pushed it. But in the back of my mind, I thought about that light. My chest tight, I went to the window and pulled the blinds back just enough to peek out. A car sat in my driveway. I couldn't see the front, just the back bumper and taillights. My stomach dropped. Nobody should be there. I froze, my breath caught. Was someone in my house? I turned back toward the room, my eyes darting toward the nightstand where my phone lay. I should call 911, I thought. Just call, even if it's nothing. I took one step and stopped cold. From the crack in my closet door, an eye was staring at me. I don't even remember screaming. My body moved before my brain did. I bolted out of the bedroom, across the living room, and out the front door into the cold night. I ran barefoot down the street, pounding on doors until finally, an older man across the street answered in his robe. He looked confused, alarmed, but when I stammered out what happened, he let me inside and called the police. It took 15 minutes before officers arrived. When we stepped outside, the car was still in my driveway, but the man was gone. The police searched my apartment. The closet door was wide open, and inside, pressed against the back wall, they found a crumpled jacket and an old flip phone. The car, of course, was his. They tracked him down by the plates. His name was Aaron Miles. He'd been arrested before for trespassing, but nothing violent. When they questioned him, his answers made no sense. He rambled about just wanting to watch, about being tired of being alone. The scariest part was when they checked his phone. In his gallery were pictures, grainy shots of me walking to my car after shifts, of me outside my apartment, even one through my living room window. He'd been watching me for weeks. The detective said the only reason I might still be alive was because his phone went off while he was hiding in my closet. That noise woke me up. If not for that, I might never have seen the door, never looked out the window, never realized he was there. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without every light on. I moved out of that apartment within a month, breaking my lease. To this day, I still check my closets before bed. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't strangers you hear about on the news. Sometimes, they're the ones who watch you silently, waiting for the perfect moment. And you never know when that moment might come. I was 16 when it happened, though it feels like yesterday. My name is Alara Winslow, and the memory of that summer still crawls beneath my skin like it's waiting to happen all over again. Back then, life felt safe, almost boring. I lived in a small town called Stonebridge, tucked far away from city chaos, where neighbors waved when you drove by and the loudest thing at night was the chorus of crickets. Our neighbors, the Davenports, were like family. Their daughter, Maris, was my closest friend, the kind of friend you spend nearly every waking moment with, where sleepovers blend into entire weekends and your parents joke that you've basically been adopted by each other's households. It was one of those heavy July evenings when the air clung to your skin and made everything feel slower. We'd planned to go shopping together later that night, just to kill time and escape the heat. But before any of that happened, something strange unfolded that I still can't shake. I was in my backyard, barefoot in the grass, when I heard the crunch of tires next door. Assuming it was Maris's mom coming home, I climbed up onto the fence like I always did, ready to call out and ask when we were leaving. But the car wasn't theirs. It was an older silver sedan, dull paint, dents along the door like it had lived a rough life. My curiosity sharpened, and instead of calling out, I hopped down and pressed my eye to a knothole in the fence. That's when I saw him. A man in a police uniform, or at least something that looked like one. The shirt was faded, the patches slightly crooked. He didn't have the belt full of gear our sheriff deputies always wore. Instead, he carried only a taser, in his hand, not in a holster. He strode up to the Davenport's front door and knocked. 3 times. Firm. Deliberate. I froze. My first thought was maybe he was serving papers or checking on something, but why the taser? Why not a marked car? I pulled my phone from my pocket and quickly texted both Maris and her dad. Me. Some guy in a fake-looking cop uniform is at your door. He's holding a taser. Do you know him? As I watched, he leaned forward, peering through their front window. After a few seconds, he turned back, walked briskly to his car, and slid inside. The sedan didn't pull away. By the time Mr. Davenport got home 15 minutes later, the car was gone. But I couldn't shake the sight of that man. The way he moved, calm, methodical, like he wasn't nervous about being seen at all. "Show me where you were standing," Mr. Davenport said as he stepped into my yard. He smelled faintly of motor oil and sweat, still in his work boots. I pointed to the knothole in the fence. "Right here. I saw the whole thing." He scrolled on his phone, then turned the screen toward me. My doorbell cam picked him up too. I leaned closer. There he was. Same wrinkled uniform, same taser in hand, same cold blank expression. "Jesus," I whispered. "That's him." Mr. Davenport's jaw tightened. He didn't waste time. He called the sheriff's office right there. Within the hour, a deputy showed up at their house, and I gave my statement. "Even if it was a process server," the deputy explained, "they don't come dressed like cops, and nobody carries a taser just for serving papers. We don't have any marked units that look like that car. If someone claims to be law enforcement here, they'd be with us." That should have been the end of it. A weird scare, maybe even a prank. But deep in my gut, I knew it wasn't. 2 weeks later, my parents and I left for a long-planned summer trip. We'd booked a 5-star resort on the coast of Arden Bay, a place so polished it almost didn't feel real. Towering white buildings, glistening pools, palm trees carefully planted in perfect rows. For the first few days, it was everything a family vacation should be. Buffets that seemed endless, lazy afternoons at the pool, music drifting in from the beach at night. But one evening changed everything. After dinner, we decided to go out again. Some shopping stalls along the beach. As we were heading out, I realized I'd left my light jacket in our room. My parents told me to hurry and grab it while they waited in the lobby. So I went back. Alone. The hotel was massive, a maze of winding hallways and branching corridors. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 3rd floor, and leaned against the cool metal railing. At the last second before the doors shut, a man slipped inside. I felt my stomach drop. It was the same man. The uniform was gone, replaced with a plain dark shirt and jeans. But the face, the sharp cheekbones, the flat eyes, the way his lips pressed together like he never smiled. That was him. I froze, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. He didn't press a button, he just stood there. When the doors opened on my floor, I got off. So did he. The hallway was long, carpeted, and quiet. My sandals made soft sounds as I walked, and his footsteps echoed just a beat behind mine. I quickened my pace. So did he. And then, something primal, something deep in my chest, screamed at me, "Run." Now I sprinted. My keycard fumbled in my shaking hand, but by some miracle, I got the door open and slammed it behind me. For a moment, the world was silent except for my ragged breathing. Then the hotel phone rang. I picked it up, heart hammering. "Hello?" A man's voice. Calm. Too calm. "You're beautiful." I went cold. "What?" "I saw you," he said. "Walking. Running. I like the way you move." I slammed the phone down, hands trembling. Seconds later, it rang again, and again, over and over. When I finally answered once more, his voice had changed. Darker now, lower. "I know what room you're in, don't hide from me, Alara." Hearing my own name shattered me. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. How did he know? I curled up against the wall, tears spilling hot and fast, unable to breathe. By the time my parents returned, I was still shaking. My dad answered the phone the next time it rang. "This is her father." "Who the hell is this?" Silence. Then a click. The line went dead, and he never called again. We told the hotel staff. They brushed it off. "Probably another guest playing a prank," they said. "Big resort, lots of people." But I knew it was him. The man from the driveway. The man from the elevator. For the rest of the trip, I never left the room alone. I didn't swim, didn't explore, didn't breathe easy. Every hallway felt like a trap. Every phone ring made my heart leap into my throat. When we got home, I couldn't walk down my street without scanning for that silver car. Couldn't sleep without checking the locks 3 times. Maris told me later she thought she saw the same car parked at the far end of our road one night, just sitting there with the lights off. By the time her dad walked outside, it was gone. The sheriff never found him. No one ever did. It's been 12 years. I live in a city now, hundreds of miles from Stonebridge. I lock my doors religiously. I never take elevators alone at night. Hotel hallways make my stomach knot. And sometimes, when I leave work late and the parking garage is too quiet, I swear I can feel eyes on me. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted, and I don't know why he chose me, but I know this. He's still out there. And sometimes when the phone rings in the middle of the night and there's only silence on the other end, I wonder if he's reminding me that he hasn't forgotten. I should have just stayed in school. I was 16 when this happened, and even now, 3 years later, I still get an uneasy feeling whenever I ride a bus alone. My name is Claire Thompson, and I grew up in Leeds, West Yorkshire. Back then, I was in 6th form. To be completely honest, I didn't really like it. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't motivated either. One of my subjects was chorus studies, which I'd chosen mostly because a couple of my friends had picked it. I regretted it almost immediately. Skipping school became a habit for me. Not often enough to get caught, but about once every 2 weeks I'd fake sick or just not show up. The problem was I couldn't exactly stay home all day without my parents noticing. Mom worked part-time at a local surgery, and Dad was self-employed, so there was always a chance he'd pop home randomly. That meant I had to leave the house to make the lie believable. That's how I started doing something strange. I would get on random buses and ride them all the way to the end of the line and back again. I know that sounds weird, but at the time it made sense. The rides were free because I had a student pass, and sitting on a bus felt safe, like I was doing something even if I wasn't. It was my little escape from both school and home. On the day this happened, it was mid-October. Cold enough for me to wear a black coat and scarf, but not winter cold yet. I remember checking the time when I left the house. It was just after 9:45 a.m. The air was sharp, the kind that stings your nose a little when you breathe in. I walked down to the bus stop, feeling that guilty thrill I always did when I skipped. When the number 47 bus pulled up, I climbed on, flashed my pass, and sat down in one of those sideways seats near the middle. I always liked that spot because it gave me space. No one right next to me, just a flat area for bags. From there, I could look at everyone without turning my head too much. The bus was nearly empty, except for the usual older crowd you see during weekday mornings. Pensioners with their shopping bags, a few people heading to appointments. No students, no noisy kids, just the quiet hum of the engine and the occasional cough or shuffle of coats. It felt calm. For the first half hour, nothing happened. I had my earphones in, listening to some music, staring out the window as we passed rows of terraced houses and little corner shops. I remember thinking the ride would probably end at the Riverside Shopping Center. Not huge, but decent enough to kill time. But then we stopped at a random lay-by near an estate, and he got on. The first thing I noticed wasn't even his face. It was the smell. As soon as the doors hissed open and he stepped inside, this wave of stench hit me, like sweat, dirt, and something sour all mixed together. I gagged before I could stop myself, pressing my sleeve against my nose. He looked rough. Late 40s or early 50s, bald on top with greasy stubble clinging to his jaw. His clothes were filthy. A stained bomber jacket, ripped tracksuit bottoms, mud-caked trainers. He had a faded rucksack slung over one shoulder, the kind that looked like it had been dragged through the gutter. His eyes were bloodshot, darting around too quickly like he was both drunk and wired on something stronger. He didn't even bother pretending to pay, just walked straight past the driver and collapsed into the sideways seat directly opposite me. Too close. Way too close. I froze, staring at the floor. I could feel him looking at me, and my chest tightened. Then he unzipped his bag and pulled out a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels. Without hesitation, he tipped it back and drank like he hadn't had water in days. His Adam's apple bobbed, his hand shaking slightly. When he lowered the bottle, he caught me glancing at him. A slow, crooked grin spread across his face. "What?" he slurred. "You want some?" He tilted the bottle toward me. My heart jumped. "No, thank you," I said quickly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Go on." He shoved the bottle closer, liquid sloshing. "Have a swig. Won't kill you." "I can't. I'm underage." My throat felt tight as I said it. He smirked. "Oh, come on. I won't tell anyone. Secret's safe with me." I looked straight ahead, pretending I hadn't heard. My palms were sweating, but I kept them clenched in my lap. For a moment I thought he might press harder, but then he leaned back, muttering to himself. At first it was incoherent. Little half-words. Then it turned into rambling sentences. Something about people watching him. Something about money he was owed. Something about God. His eyes flicked around the bus constantly, but they always returned to me. No one helped, not one person. A couple of older women glanced over, then looked away quickly. The driver didn't even turn his head. I considered moving to another seat, but there weren't any empty rows, and deep down I was scared that if I got up, he might follow. So I stayed. Every minute crawled by like an hour. Finally, the bus pulled into Riverside Shopping Center. I stood up as soon as the doors opened, eager to get off. But before I could move, his hand shot out and clamped around mine. It was like a vice. His grip was iron, his skin clammy. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with this unreadable expression. "Let go," I yelped, tugging hard. My chest filled with panic. He didn't loosen his grip. He just kept staring, his jaw twitching. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The bus driver's shout rang out. He'd stepped out of his seat, glaring down the aisle. The man startled like an animal, finally releasing me. I bolted. My legs moved before my brain did, carrying me off the bus and into the shopping center. I didn't stop until I reached the women's toilets, where I locked myself in a stall. My hands shook as I scrubbed them under the tap, again and again, like I could wash away the memory of his grip. I sat on the toilet lid, trembling. My mind kept racing. Why did he grab me? What did he want? 5 minutes later, I forced myself out. The center was busier than I expected for a weekday morning. Mums with prams, teenagers skipping lessons like me, office workers on breaks. I thought the crowd would make me feel safer. But then, I made the mistake of looking down over the balcony to the ground floor. He was there. The same filthy jacket, the same rucksack, the same eyes scanning until they locked onto me. Our gazes met, and his lips curved into that crooked smile again. Then he started walking. Fast. Straight for the escalator. Cold fear shot through me. I darted into the nearest shop, which happened to be an electronics store. Inside, I tried to blend in, pretending to browse the phones. My heart hammered so loudly I thought people could hear it. Through the glass doors, I saw him pass by. He glanced inside but didn't stop, just kept walking, disappearing into the crowd. I stayed put for a minute, then slipped out, moving quickly toward the exit. I ran down the escalator, out the front doors and straight to the bus stop. When the bus finally came, I climbed on, sat at the very back, and didn't move until it brought me all the way home. That was 3 years ago. I never saw him again, but I still think about it sometimes, how easily things could have gone differently if the driver hadn't spoken up, or if he'd actually followed me into that shop. I know now that I should have gone straight to security, told someone, done something. But I was 16, terrified, and just wanted it all to end. That day taught me something important. Fear doesn't always look like screaming or running. Sometimes it's sitting frozen in your seat, pretending everything's fine while your insides twist into knots. And sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened, it's what could have. I thought it was just a ride. I was 18 when this happened. Back then, I was in my first semester of college. New city, new campus, new everything. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and my parents were, well, strict, to put it mildly. They kept me sheltered from a lot of things: parties, dating, late nights with friends. I went to an all-girls school, so I had barely interacted with guys outside of my family. By the time I started college, I felt like I was a kid tossed into the deep end of the pool. Suddenly there were frat parties, co-ed dorms, group hangouts with alcohol, and guys, lots of them, interested in talking, flirting, and asking me out. I didn't really know how to navigate it. I was shy, polite to a fault, and too inexperienced to know when I should draw harder lines. Still, I was excited. That's why when I met Ryan, a junior who was funny, charming, and surprisingly attentive, I was over the moon. He wasn't like the other loud, cocky guys I'd met at parties. He was thoughtful, asked me real questions, and never made me feel stupid for being naive. After a few casual dates, coffee, a walk downtown, a study session in the library, he invited me and my friends to a launch party he and his friends were hosting at a rented event space near campus. That night was magic. The music, the energy, the way my friends and I danced until our legs felt like jelly. Ryan kept checking in with me, making sure I had water, laughing when I tried to keep up with his dancing. By the end of the night, I was exhausted but giddy. When he asked if I wanted to stay over at his place, I hesitated for a second before nodding. I let my friends know, and they gave me the knowing looks and thumbs up. His apartment was small but cozy. We talked for a while, then crashed. He warned me he had tutoring early in the morning, so he'd probably be gone before I woke up. I told him that was fine, and it was, until the morning. When I woke up, the apartment was silent. The November air coming through the cracked window was frigid, and I realized I hadn't brought anything with me. No clothes, no toothbrush, nothing. Just my burgundy sweater dress from the night before, a little wrinkled now, and my purse. I thought about texting Ryan to ask if I could borrow sweatpants and a hoodie for the ride back, but the thought of rummaging through his stuff while he wasn't there made me feel awkward. So instead, I pulled my dress back on, shoved my shoes onto my sore feet, and requested an Uber. The map showed the driver was just a few minutes away, so I stood outside the building, shivering, hugging my arms against myself. That's when the minivan pulled up. A silver Honda Odyssey. The driver rolled down the window, leaning slightly toward me. He was middle-aged, maybe late 40s or 50s, with dark hair graying at the sides and wire-rimmed glasses. His accent was noticeable but clear. "You going to campus?" he asked. I nodded, smiling politely. "Yes, that's me." He leaned over and unlocked the passenger side. "This door here is better. Back one is stuck. Sit up front, safer." For some reason, I didn't question it. Maybe because it was early morning, daylight, and the campus was only 15 minutes away. He seemed normal enough, and I didn't want to make it awkward, so I got in. "Good morning," he said warmly, adjusting the heat. "Cold out, isn't it? You okay with the temperature?" "Yes, thank you," I said, fastening my seatbelt. "Where you headed? Dorms?" "Yeah, back to the dorms." He nodded and pulled onto the street. For a while, the conversation was small talk. Weather, how expensive tuition was, how he only drove part-time to support his kids. Then his eyes flicked to me at a stoplight. "You look like you're dressed for a party," he said with a chuckle. I gave a small laugh, even though my stomach twisted. "Oh, I was just staying at a friend's last night after we went out. Didn't pack a change of clothes." "Ah, I see. But cold morning for that dress, no?" I smiled weakly, nodded. "Yeah, definitely." The light turned green and we drove on. I hoped that was the end of it. But then he said, "Looks good on you, though." "Very nice. You are very pretty girl." I froze. My hands tightened around my purse strap. I forced out a polite, "Thank you," and turned toward the window, watching the buildings roll by, silently begging for the ride to end quickly. There were still 10 minutes left. He started asking me questions. "Where's your family? You from around here?" "Not really, a few hours away," I said, trying to keep my answers short. "Your parents must miss you. You live alone now?" "No, in the dorms with a roommate." "Roommate home today?" I hesitated. "Yeah, she should be." It wasn't true, but I thought maybe it would keep him from, I don't know, thinking I was alone. He nodded slowly, smiling in a way that made me uncomfortable. Then casually, he asked, "Can I hold your hand?" The words shocked me. I thought I misheard. "What?" He laughed softly. "Your hand, so soft. Can I?" Before I could respond, he reached over and placed his hand gently on mine, which was resting on my thigh. My whole body went rigid. I didn't pull away. I don't know why. My brain just froze. We sat like that, his hand lightly covering mine, as the car moved closer to campus. I stared out the window, my heart pounding so hard I felt it in my ears. When we finally turned into the campus parking lot, I almost cried with relief. He pulled right up to the entrance of my dorm. "This is your building?" he asked, glancing at me. I nodded quickly. "Yes." "Thank you." Instead of unlocking the doors immediately, he tilted his head. "Maybe I can get your number?" I fumbled with my purse. I don't give out my number." He smirked. "That's okay. Uber has it anyway. I'll just see it there." My blood turned cold. Then he leaned a little closer. "Can I kiss you?" I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed so tight I felt like I couldn't breathe. Before I could even respond, he leaned in and pressed his lips against the side of my mouth. I had turned my head toward the door, so it landed awkwardly at the corner, but it was enough. I snapped back, yanking my hand free, fumbling for the door handle. I shoved the door open, stumbling out onto the curb. "Bye," I said shakily, slamming the door behind me and running toward the building without looking back. The moment I got inside, I collapsed against the wall, shaking. My chest hurt, my stomach churned, and I felt dirty. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and burst into tears. I blamed myself for wearing that dress, for sitting in the front seat, for not saying no loudly enough. But the truth came later, after the fear settled into anger. It wouldn't have mattered what I wore or where I sat. People like him don't need an invitation. They only need an opportunity. I filed a report with Uber that same morning. The customer service agent I spoke with sounded horrified, assured me his account would be suspended. She even mentioned there had been other complaints against him. I should have pressed for more, but I didn't. I just wanted it over. Uber refunded the ride, gave me credits. None of that mattered. What mattered was the lingering terror I felt every time I got into a car afterward, the way I flinched when male drivers made small talk, the constant fear that one day being polite wouldn't be enough to keep me safe. That ride lasted 15 minutes, but it haunted me for years. I was 7 years old when this happened, though sometimes when I replay it in my mind, it feels like I was older because of how much it shook me. I had a fairly sheltered childhood, strict parents, a small circle of family friends, and not much freedom on my own. That day, though, even though I was surrounded by my family, I never felt more alone or more terrified. We were in a busy city center, the kind of place packed with tall buildings, restaurants with shiny menus posted outside, and people bustling in every direction like a sea you could drown in. My parents loved taking us out on weekends, though I personally hated going into the city. It was always noisy, crowded, and overwhelming. I would have rather stayed home with my books or played in the small park near our house. But my parents insisted. "Come on, Amelia," my mom said that morning, using her usual chipper tone. "It'll be fun. We'll find a nice place to eat, maybe get some dessert after. You love dessert." I didn't argue. At that age, I didn't really get to. My older sister, Hannah, who was 11 at the time, had more say in things, and she seemed more interested in the idea than I was. The train ride into the city was uneventful, though I remember staring out the window, watching the gray blur of buildings pass by. I thought about the last time I'd gotten lost in a crowded place, a theme park not far from our town. I had been separated for less than 10 minutes, but it had felt like forever, and I cried so hard my parents scolded me afterward for wandering in the first place. That memory never really left me, and it always lingered in the back of my mind whenever we went out somewhere busy. By the time we got into the city, the sidewalks were already thick with people. My parents were in their element, pointing out shops, reading menus outside cafes, while Hannah asked questions and made little comments. I did what I always did. I drifted slightly to the side, staying close enough not to get yelled at, but far enough that I could stare at things quietly. At one restaurant, my dad leaned in toward the menu posted outside, his finger running down the list. "Hannah, look. They've got pasta. You like pasta, right?" "Depends what kind," she muttered. My mom crouched a little to my level. "They've got chicken fingers too, Amelia. You'd eat that, wouldn't you?" "Maybe," I said softly. I didn't like deciding on the spot. That was when I noticed him. At one of the outdoor tables, just a few feet away, sat a man who didn't seem to be doing anything. No food in front of him, no drink. He was just sitting there, watching. At first, I didn't even register it. I thought maybe he was looking at the menu too, or glancing past me at the people rushing down the street. But when my eyes flicked back to him, I realized his gaze was locked on me. He was older, maybe in his 40s. Short hair, a bit unshaven, wearing a dark jacket that looked worn at the edges. What made me freeze was his expression. He wasn't just looking. He was raising his eyebrows up and down in this exaggerated way, like he was trying to make a private joke with me. Then he smiled, slowly, showing teeth. I looked away so fast my cheeks burned. I stared hard at my parents, willing them to finish reading the menu, but something made me glance back. He was still at it, eyebrows dancing, lips pulled into that stretched grin. My chest tightened. I didn't understand it, but it felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain at 7 years old. "Mom," I whispered, tugging lightly at her sleeve. She didn't even look at me, just waved a hand. "1 minute, Amelia, we're just deciding." I stood there for what felt like forever, caught in this strange staring contest I didn't want to be in. My heart picked up. The man tilted his head, still grinning, his eyes never leaving mine. And then, in one blink, my parents were gone. Not really gone, of course. They had just stepped further down the sidewalk to the next restaurant. But when I looked up and realized they weren't beside me anymore, it was like the ground dropped out from under me. My throat tightened. The air seemed heavier. I whipped my head around, trying to spot Hannah's jacket, my mom's bright scarf, anything familiar in the crowd. People shoved past me, laughing, talking, rushing in every direction. Nobody noticed a little girl frozen on the sidewalk. I turned back, and that was when the man stood up. His chair scraped against the pavement. My stomach dropped as he started walking, slow at first, then more deliberately, straight toward me. His creepy smile was still plastered on his face. Panic surged in my chest. I didn't think. I just ran. I darted into the crowd, weaving between strangers, my breath coming out in short, sharp bursts. My eyes scanned desperately until, like some miracle, I spotted my family a little ways down the street. My mom was gesturing toward another menu, completely unaware that I had been separated. I practically slammed into her side, grabbing her hand so tightly she looked down in surprise. "Amelia, what's gotten into you?" she asked, frowning. "Nothing," I whispered, my chest heaving. I didn't dare look back. I wanted to tell her what had just happened, about the man with the eyebrows and the awful smile. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of being blamed before for getting lost. Maybe it was the fear that she wouldn't believe me. Or maybe it was because I didn't want to say it out loud, didn't want to make it more real than it already was. So I kept quiet. But inside, I couldn't stop thinking. What if I hadn't seen them? What if I'd stayed frozen a second longer? That man had started walking toward me like he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Maybe, as one of my friends suggested years later, he would have pretended to help me find my parents and lured me away. Or maybe he just wanted to scare me for reasons I'll never understand. The truth is, I'll never know. But every time I step into a crowded place, every time I lose sight of the people I'm with for even a second, I feel that same creeping panic. I see his face again, eyebrows lifting, smile stretching too wide. And I wonder if somewhere in that crowd, another child saw him too, and maybe wasn't as lucky as me. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell a story like this. I've always considered myself logical, grounded, not easily rattled. I wasn't the type to jump at shadows or spiral into paranoia because someone gave me a strange look. But the thing about fear, the real kind, the primal kind, is that it doesn't care how logical you are. It doesn't care if you're 6'3", broad-shouldered, and built like you could crush someone if it came to it. When that instinct flips on, when your brain tells you something isn't right, it's impossible to ignore. This story has been sitting with me for years. I've tried convincing myself it was nothing, that I overreacted, that maybe I just had too much caffeine in my system and my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down I know better. To understand why this stuck with me, I should back up a little. I grew up in a medium-sized town in Ohio. It wasn't the safest place, but it wasn't the worst either. We had the typical mix: friendly neighbors, local sports rivalries, quiet suburban streets on one side, and then pockets of rougher areas where crime wasn't unusual. I learned to keep my head on a swivel early on, thanks in part to my dad drilling that lesson into me. "Listen," he used to say, pointing a finger at me when I was a teenager. "Being a big guy might stop people from starting with you, but don't get comfortable. Wolves don't care how tall the sheep are." That stuck, and it came back to me full force the night this happened. It was summer, 2014. I was 19, out of high school, taking classes part-time at the community college, and working nights at a local shipping warehouse. Most of my friends had either gone away to four-year colleges or were working odd jobs around town. I wasn't in a rush. I figured I'd save some money, keep working, and eventually transfer when I had a better idea of what I wanted to do. That summer, my closest friend was a guy named Ryan. We'd known each other since middle school. He was lean, wiry, the type who always had some ridiculous story to tell or dumb joke lined up. We spent a lot of nights driving around in my old Toyota, talking about girls, music, and what the hell we were doing with our lives. That night, it was a Thursday. Nothing special. We decided to meet up late, maybe around 10:30 p.m., and ended up at the Meadowbrook Supercenter, the 24-hour Walmart just outside of town. Back then, it was the hangout spot. If you had nowhere else to go, you could always end up wandering the aisles, grabbing cheap snacks, or just sitting in the parking lot people watching. The lot was big, spread out, with only about half the lights working. The bulbs overhead buzzed faintly, casting yellow circles of light over certain rows while other sections faded into darkness. Around the edges, especially near the back where the semi-truck sometimes idled, it got real shadowy. We parked in the middle, rolled the windows down, and let the warm summer air drift in. Ryan pulled out a Bluetooth speaker and put on some music. We weren't doing anything important, just sitting there, drinking soda, and laughing about something stupid from earlier. That's when I noticed her. At first, it didn't register as anything unusual. A woman, maybe mid-40s, walking across the lot. Thin frame, baggy jeans, loose t-shirt, dark hair pulled back. She walked slow, steady, like she was looking for something. I figured she was just heading to her car. But she didn't. She veered, straight toward us. I turned down the music. Ryan leaned forward, frowning. "Yo," he muttered. "She's coming right over here." I didn't have time to respond before she was at the passenger window, bending slightly, rapping her knuckles 3 times on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Ryan rolled it down a crack. "Please," she said, her voice shaky. "I need help. My car broke down over there." She gestured toward the far end of the lot where the lights were weakest. I followed her finger, and that's when my stomach tightened. It was a van. A windowless, rusted-out white cargo van. Ryan glanced at me. I could see the uncertainty in his face. What's wrong with it?" he asked. She shifted, looking behind her like she was nervous. "It won't start. I need someone to come with me, please." Something in her tone was off. Desperate, but not the natural kind, like she'd practiced it. I leaned across Ryan. "Where exactly?" "Just over there," she said again. "By the edge. Please, I don't feel safe." I nodded slowly. "Okay, you walk over. We'll follow in the car. That way we can jump it if you need." The second I said it, her whole body language changed. Her hand shot out, grabbing the handle. Before I could react, she yanked the passenger door open and climbed into the back seat. "No," she said firmly. "Just drive me there. There are guys over there. They're watching me. Please, drive me to my van." Ryan stiffened. No. Get out." "Yeah," I added, my hand sliding down between my seat and the console where I kept a small tire iron. "You need to get out of the car, now." Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. "I'm not getting out. You promised to help. I need you to drive me there." The word stuck out. Promised. I hadn't promised anything. "Look," Ryan said, his voice rising. "We don't know you. You can't just get in our car. Get out." She shook her head violently. Just drive me to my van, please. Just to the van. Our van." I froze. Ryan's eyes widened. That one slip told us everything we needed to know. I threw the car in reverse. The tires squealed as we backed out of the spot. She lurched forward, gripping the back of Ryan's seat. "This isn't the way," she shouted. "Drive to the van." "Nope," I snapped, steering straight for the front entrance of Walmart. Bright lights, people, cameras. Ryan turned, his face pale. "Lady, get out of the car." But she didn't. She just kept pleading, voice climbing higher. "Please, you don't understand. I need you to go back there now. They'll leave if you don't. Please." Her words tangled. Too fast, too rehearsed. I slammed the car into park right in front of the sliding doors where employees were collecting carts. I yanked the tire iron from beside my seat and spun around, my voice booming louder than I realized. "Get the hell out of my car. Now." She flinched, eyes darting toward the employees. Without another word, she bolted out the back door, sprinting across the lot toward the van. And I swear to God, I'll never forget what I saw next. The van's side door slid open before she even reached it. A shadow moved inside. She dove in. The door slammed shut. And then the van peeled out of the lot, tires screeching as it disappeared into the night. For a solid minute, Ryan and I sat there, both breathing hard, both staring at the empty space where the van had been. "What the actual—" Ryan muttered. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette. Dude, we almost—" "I know," I said flatly. "We didn't even finish the night." I drove him home, then sat in my driveway until nearly 3 a.m., gripping that tire iron like it was the only thing keeping me alive. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I kept replaying it. The way she insisted. The slip of our van. The fact that they'd parked in the darkest corner waiting for some idiot kids to take the bait. And the thought that kept me up the longest. What would have happened if we'd actually driven her there? It's been years now. I'm older, a little wiser, and yeah, I carry these days. But that night is burned into me. Because here's the truth. Most predators don't look like the monsters we imagine. They don't lunge at you in alleys or jump out of bushes with knives. They manipulate, they coax, they use sympathy, and sometimes they send someone who doesn't look threatening at all. I don't know what their plan was. Robbery? Abduction? Worse? I'll never know. But I do know this. If your gut tells you something is wrong, listen, even if you can't explain it, even if you feel crazy. That night, instinct kept us alive. I was 24 the summer it all happened. I had been living overseas for years, but when my aunt suggested a family reunion in the United States, I knew I couldn't say no. It had been nearly a decade since we had all been in the same place, and my grandmother, who was pushing 80, was getting frailer by the year. I wanted to see her, to sit at her kitchen table and eat her fried cornbread, to walk with her along the little gravel road outside her mountain cabin. My grandmother, Ruth, lived in a rural part of North Carolina. I mean really rural. If you've ever been in the Appalachian Mountains, you'll know the type of place I'm talking about. Winding roads that barely fit 2 cars, thick woods pressing in on both sides, deer, coyotes, the occasional black bear. The kind of place where the night sky was so black you could see every star, but if you stepped outside alone after dark, you felt like something was watching you. Most of my family lived in the city, so when the reunion was announced, they all had to scramble to find somewhere to stay. There weren't many hotels nearby, just a few run-down motels off the highway 30 minutes away. I had luck on my side. Grandma Ruth insisted I stay with her in her small cabin. My brother Daniel and his wife Sarah weren't so fortunate. They were told they'd have to stay elsewhere. That's when the man came into the picture. His name was Mark Ellison. He was a long-haul truck driver in his early 50s who lived just down the mountain from Grandma Ruth. He owned a 3-bedroom ranch-style house. He lived alone, had never been married, and claimed to hate clutter. The way Grandma put it was, "Mark's a good neighbor. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's friendly enough." He said if Daniel and Sarah need a place, they're welcome to stay with him. No charge. At first, it sounded ideal. My brother and sister-in-law were hesitant, but free lodging was hard to pass up. They agreed. The day we went to check out Mark's house, I tagged along out of curiosity. The drive there was beautiful. Rolling hills, forest all around, a view that stretched forever. When we pulled up to his driveway, I remember saying, "Wow, this is gorgeous." Sarah nodded. "This looks like something out of a postcard." Mark came out to greet us. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a big grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He shook Daniel's hand and clapped him on the back like they'd been friends for years. "Glad you could make it," he said warmly. "Come on in, I'll show you around." I remember thinking maybe Grandma was right. He seemed like a decent guy. That opinion changed the second we stepped inside. The smell hit first. It wasn't subtle. A wave of rotting meat mixed with chemicals and something floral like cheap air freshener. It made my eyes water. Sarah wrinkled her nose immediately. Daniel glanced at me, clearly uncomfortable. Mark noticed. He gave a little shrug. Sorry about the smell. I've got cats and sometimes they make a mess. I just sprayed some cleaner too. It'll air out soon. I didn't say anything, but it wasn't the smell of cats. I'd grown up with cats. This was different, heavier, wrong. We followed him through the living room. The place was spotless. Too spotless. Not a speck of dust, everything neatly arranged. Yet the stench lingered, clinging to the air. Mark led us to the guest room. "This'll be yours," he said to Daniel and Sarah. It was a nice room. Big bed, sliding glass doors that opened to a breathtaking view of the mountains. But then I noticed something odd. The sliding glass door had two locks, a sturdy deadbolt and a thick padlock. Daniel noticed too. He tried to play it casual. "That's a lot of locks." Mark gave a little laugh. "I have cats. Don't like them wandering outside. Too many mountain lions, possums, even eagles around here. Gotta keep them safe." Daniel later admitted he almost joked, "How big are your cats?" but thought better of it. The unsettling part was that we'd already seen one of his cats outside when we pulled in. To get to the kitchen, we had to walk back outside, around the house, and through another door. Mark explained it like it was normal. Inside, the kitchen was immaculate. Gleaming counters, polished floor. But the door that connected the kitchen to the hallway leading to the bedrooms, deadbolted, padlocked. Something about those locks bothered me more than the smell. Locks are supposed to keep danger out, not in. Still, Daniel and Sarah agreed to stay. That week, they avoided being in the house as much as possible. They'd come back late, go straight to the room and leave early. Daniel shrugged it off when I asked. "Guy's weird, but harmless. Probably just doesn't clean up after his cats. Cat food stinks if it sits out." Maybe, but I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. 2 years later, I visited Grandma Ruth again. By then, Daniel and Sarah had long forgotten about the smell. Mark came by one afternoon. We were all sitting in the living room when he brought it up out of nowhere. "Hey," he said, looking at me intently. "I just want to apologize about how my house smelled when your brother stayed there." I froze. We hadn't mentioned the smell. Not once. "I want you to know it's all cleaned up now," he continued. "It wasn't good before. You should come see it." I tried to brush it off. "Oh, that's okay. I didn't even stay there." His face darkened. It wasn't good. You need to see it's better now. Come over. I'll show you every room." Something in his tone unsettled me. "Still," Grandma insisted. "Oh, go on, honey. Mark's just being polite." Reluctantly, I went. The house was spotless this time. No smell, no locks. Cats lounging freely. But the way Mark hovered over me, watching my reactions, smiling too much, complimenting me constantly, made my skin crawl. He insisted on showing me every single room as if proving something. When I told him it looked nice, he beamed like a child seeking approval. Another time when my niece, only 8 years old then, came with us to Grandma's, Mark showed up again. He kept trying to coax her to come to his house. "You can ride my exercise bike," he told her over and over. "You can ride it as much as you want. It adjusts for anyone." I cut in. "She's too little for that." He insisted. No, she can. I'll show you." I said, "Then show me how it adjusts." He immediately backtracked. "Oh, that's okay. My house is messy right now. Another time." But he still turned to my niece. "You'd like it? Want to try?" That's when I called her mother's attention to it. The moment I did, Mark went silent. Grandma Ruth passed away a few years later. I miss her dearly, but I don't miss Mark. I don't know what was really going on in that house. Maybe it really was just cats and bad cleaning habits. Maybe it was something darker. The locks, the smell, the strange apologies years later, they still haunt me. All I know is that my family was lucky. And to this day, whenever I think of Mark Ellison, I get chills. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't strangers in the city, they're neighbors in the mountains. I never thought that the thing I'd be most proud of in my life wouldn't be a degree, or some promotion, or anything people usually brag about. It would be sobriety. 9 years without a drop of alcohol. 9 years of holding the line against something that had nearly ruined me before I was even old enough to vote. It all started when I was 15. I grew up in a neighborhood where liquor stores sat on every corner like bus stops, their neon, open signs glowing even brighter than the streetlights. I can't count the times I saw people stumbling outside those doors, brown paper bags clutched tight. Drinking was normal where I lived in Crestwood, a working-class stretch of Los Angeles County that no tourists ever went near. It was just life. People drank because it was Tuesday or because they'd had a long shift or because it was the weekend. Nobody batted an eye. When I got hooked, my parents were terrified. They transferred me to a different school, St. Mark's, a small private academy across town, hoping I'd get a fresh start. I hated them for it at the time. Hated the uniforms, the bus rides, the way everybody looked at me like I didn't belong. But now, I can admit they probably saved my life. By the time I turned 18, a few months before graduation, I was already over 2 years sober. I had outgrown most of the teen recovery programs. My counselors were aging me out, telling me they only worked with minors. That meant I had to find my own way in adult groups. That's how I ended up at the Tuesday-Thursday 7 a.m. AA meetings in the basement of a little brick church on Harlow Avenue. The place smelled like old hymnals and lemon cleaner, folding chairs in a circle, styrofoam cups of coffee, a big banner with the 12 steps taped on the wall. I didn't just sit in silence at those meetings. I talked, maybe too much. Some people said so anyway. But I felt like I needed to share because maybe if someone heard me, they'd realize they weren't alone. I tried to make people laugh sometimes too, even if it was about something dark. Maybe that annoyed people, maybe it helped. I'll never really know. That's where I met him. His name was Derek. The first time we actually spoke, the meeting had just ended. Most people were filing out, but I lingered like always, writing in my journal. Derek walked over, tall, skinny, with brown hair that always seemed a little too clean, like he washed it twice a day. "What are you writing?" he asked. "Just journaling," I said, closing the notebook halfway. He smiled like he'd just learned a secret. "That's cool. I should do that. Maybe it'll help me organize my head." I shrugged. "It helps me. Sometimes." After that, he sat next to me at every meeting. And afterward, we'd talk. Not long conversations, just little things. He was about my age, maybe a year older. He'd been sober less than 6 months. He asked me questions sometimes. If I was applying to college, if I had a job, if I was planning to stay with this group through the summer. I told him I wasn't sure yet. I had just gotten a job at a big department store across town, and there were AA meetings closer to there. I'll never forget the way his face fell when I said that. "You won't be coming here anymore?" he asked. "Not sure yet," I repeated, trying to sound casual. Right, makes sense." But the look on his face, pure disappointment, like I had personally abandoned him. I didn't think much of it then. But looking back, that was the first crack in the floor. The last 2 weeks of senior year were chaos. Senior ditch day, late-night hangouts, end-of-year parties. I missed a few meetings. Honestly, I barely thought about them. I was 18, sober, about to graduate. Life felt good for the first time in years. Graduation day was a blur of heat, caps and gowns, my parents crying in the stands. But when I looked toward the back of the crowd, I froze. Derek. He was standing there in the shade of a tree, smiling at me like it was perfectly normal that he'd shown up. He wasn't family. He wasn't a friend. He was just a guy from AA meetings. After the ceremony, as people hugged and threw their caps, Derek walked over. He had a little gift bag. "Congrats," he said, holding it out. Inside was a box of chocolates and a handwritten note. "I'll miss you at the meetings. Don't forget us. You make the room brighter." I mumbled, "Thank you," because what else do you say? But something in my stomach twisted. I never went back to that group again. 2 weeks later, I started my job at Bellamy's department store working the cosmetics counter. It was perfect for me, steady hours, decent pay, and the chance to practice talking to strangers without panicking. The first time I saw Derek there, I thought it had to be coincidence. He walked past the perfume displays, glanced at me, and kept moving. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. The second day, he came again. Same path, same glance. The third day, I knew it wasn't an accident. He never asked for help, never bought anything. He just lingered, circling my counter, staring in this way that wasn't even subtle, like he didn't care who noticed. Finally, I told one of my coworkers, Monica, a bold woman in her 40s who never let anyone push her around. "Say less," she said. "I got this." The next time Derek showed up, Monica walked straight up to him. "Hey, what are you doing here?" she asked loudly enough for customers to hear. Derek blinked. "Just shopping." "No, you're not. You've been here 3 days in a row, circling her counter. You think we don't notice? You're creeping her out. It's toxic. You need to leave." People turned their heads. Derek's face went red. He stammered something under his breath and walked away. I felt like I could finally breathe. That night, I told my manager. She was firm but calm. "If he comes back, tell me immediately. We'll handle it." But Derek never came back. At least not there. The weeks passed. I stayed busy with work, busy with life. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When I walked home from the bus stop at night, I swore I heard footsteps behind me. Once, I thought I saw a figure across the street, standing just at the edge of a streetlight glow. I told myself it was paranoia. After all, Derek had disappeared after being called out. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he really did move on. But every time I passed a church, every time I saw a folding chair or a styrofoam cup, my stomach dropped. I had gotten sober because I wanted control over my life. But that's the thing about control. It only takes one stranger to remind you how fragile it really is. Years have gone by since then. I never saw Derek again. I don't know where he went or what he wanted from me. Maybe Monica scared him enough that he finally gave up. Maybe he found someone else. But sometimes late at night when I wake up thirsty and walk to the kitchen for a glass of water, I still think about him, about how easy it was for him to find me at school, at graduation, at work. And I wonder, if Monica hadn't spoken up that day, how much further would he have gone? Sobriety is still my proudest accomplishment, but survival, quietly, stubbornly every day, comes close. Because I know just how easily my story could have ended differently. I never thought I'd be the kind of girl to end up in a situation like this. Growing up, I wasn't popular. I wasn't the one boys noticed. And honestly, I carried that weight with me every day. By the time I was 16, I was desperate for validation. Desperate to feel like someone actually wanted me. That's when I met Aaron. We met on Snapchat. It started with casual streaks, little back and forths, nothing serious. But within days, he was pouring his heart out to me. "You're different." He'd text at 2 a.m. "You're the only one who gets me. Don't ever leave me. I don't know what I'd do without you." At 16, those words felt magical. They wrapped around me like a blanket. I didn't realize then that it wasn't love, it was control. It was love bombing. Within a week, he asked me to drive out to his house. It was almost an hour away, and I was barely confident behind the wheel. But I went anyway. I remember gripping the steering wheel with sweaty palms, whispering to myself, "This is what people do when they're in love, right? That was the beginning of the end. From the start, Aaron was possessive. "Don't talk to your guy friends," he'd say flatly. "Why do you even need friends when you have me?" I laughed it off. I thought maybe that's just how guys are when they're in love. He made me feel like I owed him loyalty, like he was the only one who would ever want me. When he told me he thought he might be a sociopath, I brushed it off as dark humor. But the way he said it, with no hesitation, no smile, just cold honesty, it should have been enough to make me leave. But I stayed. I stayed through the lies, through the accusations, through the way he slowly peeled me away from my friends and family, until it felt like my entire world was him. Aaron cheated. I caught him 3 times. Once, I found messages. Another time, a girl messaged me directly. And then, he admitted that in our 18 months together, he'd only been faithful for 3 months. I repeated in disbelief, tears streaming down my face. He shrugged. "Better than nothing, right?" I should have walked then, but I didn't. Because every time he'd cry, every time he'd say, "You're the only one I have. Please don't leave me," I folded. My abandonment issues from my father's absence made me feel like walking away from Aaron would make me a monster. I told myself, he needs me. If I leave, he'll fall apart. I can't do that to him. So I stayed. When he joined the Marines, I thought maybe things would get better. Distance could change people, right? We wrote letters all through boot camp. 13 weeks of paper soaked in ink and emotions. I drove to California to see him graduate, saving every penny just for the trip. When I saw him, standing tall in uniform, I felt like all the pain had been worth it. But it wasn't too plea. A few days before he shipped off, I did something I still regret. I proposed. I was 18, down on one knee in his messy bedroom, with a cheap ring from a pawn shop. My voice shook. "Aaron, will you marry me?" He said yes. But his eyes didn't light up the way I dreamed they would. He moved in with me after boot camp, claiming he couldn't go back to his parents. I thought I was saving him. Instead, I was caging myself. When he shipped back out for training in California, the paranoia ate me alive. I made fake Instagram accounts to check on him, and that's how I found it, his second account, hidden from me, where he followed girl after girl. Then came the post, a story hidden from me but not from the world. A meme about cheating on your dumb girlfriend. I snapped. I texted him, fingers trembling on the screen. "Do you think this is funny? After everything? After how much it's destroyed me?" He tried to play it off, but I knew. Deep down, I always knew. So I ended it. The 22nd of April, I packed his things into boxes, drove them to his parents' house, and told him to never contact me again. For 3 weeks, silence. 3 weeks of shaky healing. 3 weeks of almost believing I was free. Then, at 11 p.m. one night, my phone buzzed. Package arrived. Confused, I texted back, "Check your porch." My stomach dropped. Slowly, I opened the front door. Sitting on the porch was a notebook, black cover, worn edges. I didn't touch it. I wanted to slam the door, call the cops, pretend it wasn't real. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside, page after page of messy handwriting. Letters addressed to me. Confessions. Ramblings. Declarations of undying love. I couldn't finish it. My chest was tight, my skin crawling. He had ridden his bike 13 miles in the middle of the night just to leave this at my door. I blocked the number, gave the notebook to my parents. Slept on their floor that night. At 1:30 a.m., another buzz, a new number. "Can you honestly tell me you've enjoyed this past month without me?" I wanted to scream. He was finding ways back into my life, number after number. I messaged back, shaking with anger. "Yes, I've enjoyed it. My life is better without you. Do not contact me again." Then I changed my phone number, changed my garage code, changed my front door locks. But he didn't stop. Letters came in the mail. One of them a suicide note, describing in chilling detail how he'd kill himself and why it would be my fault. I called the police, sent them for a wellness check. He was alive, told them he was just upset, Another letter admitted he'd lied about suicide attempts, lied about being hospitalized, lied about therapy. He said it was easier to control me if I thought he was fragile. One letter confessed, "I watched you from the hill near your house. You didn't see me. You never see me. But I see you." That was the one that broke me. I filed a police report. 2 days later, more letters, this time mailed from another state. He claimed he had moved, said he'd keep writing until I took him back. One read, "You can change your number. You can change your locks, but you can't change your address. I'll always know where you are." I couldn't breathe reading it. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. That was months ago. The letters still come, irregularly, like shadows slipping under my door. Each envelope is another reminder that I will never be completely free of him. Now, every time my phone buzzes with a random number, I panic. Every time I hear a bike tire on the road outside, I freeze. Every nightmare has his face in it. He cheated on me, broke me, abused me, manipulated me, and still, somehow, he thinks he owns me. I don't want justice just for myself. I want it for the next girl, because there will be one, and she might not survive what I did. Some nights, I lie awake, replaying it all. The notebook, the letters, the late-night texts, his eyes when he told me he might be a sociopath, and I whisper to myself, "Never again, never again," because I will never let him or anyone like him own me again. I never thought much about living alone. When I signed the lease on my apartment 2 years ago, I saw it as a kind of freedom. I was 27 at the time, working as an assistant manager at a logistics company in Riverton, Ohio. The complex wasn't fancy, but it was clean, had plenty of parking, and sat in a decent neighborhood, quiet but not too far from downtown. My parents worried about me moving out by myself. "Are you sure you'll be safe there?" My mom had asked the day I signed the papers. "Mom," I laughed, "there's security cameras everywhere, and I'm on the second floor. It's fine." Back then, I truly believed it. My life had been ordinary work, gym, the occasional night out with coworkers. Nothing ever felt threatening. That is, until just a few weeks ago. The knock. It was a Thursday afternoon, around 4:15. I had just gotten home from work, tossed my bag on the couch, and was halfway through microwaving leftovers when I heard a sharp knock on my front door. I frowned. Nobody ever knocked on my door. When I opened it, a woman stood there. She was maybe mid-32nd, brunette, thin, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. I didn't recognize her. "Hi," she said quickly, almost out of breath. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I just saw a man trying to break into your car." My stomach dropped. "What, my car?" "Yes. I was walking by, and I saw you pull in earlier." A few minutes later, this guy came along tall, maybe in a black jacket, and he went straight to your car. He tried the doors, checked the windows. I didn't stick around long because I didn't want him to see me. I blinked at her, trying to process. "Are you serious?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I thought you should know." I grabbed my keys immediately. "I'm going to check." "I'll come with you," she offered. Something about her tone was strange, too insistent, but I brushed it off, more worried about my car. We walked out into the parking lot together. My car, a gray Toyota Corolla, sat where I always parked it, third row near the middle. Nothing looked disturbed, doors shut, windows intact. I unlocked it and peeked inside. Everything was where I left it. "No damage," I muttered. "That's good," the woman said, watching me closely. I glanced around the lot. Other residents were coming and going, but I didn't see anyone matching her description. "Do you know which direction he went?" She shook her head. "Sorry, I just thought you should know." "Well, thanks for telling me," I said cautiously. She smiled faintly, then turned and walked off toward the far side of the lot. I assumed she lived in the building and went back upstairs, unsettled but relieved my car was fine. The next morning, around 7:45, I left for work. The lot was mostly empty, people already gone. But as I pulled out, I noticed a dark sedan idling near the back fence. Something made me glance over, and I froze. The same woman was behind the wheel. She stared straight ahead, not at me, but the recognition was instant. My first thought was, oh, she must live here too. Still, I'd never seen her before yesterday, and now she was here, sitting in her car for no reason. I drove off, shaking the feeling. That evening, I pulled into my usual space. Seconds later, a car rolled into the lot. It parked against the back, facing me. I looked. It was her again. This time I didn't get out right away. Instead, I stayed in my car, pretending to scroll my phone. She didn't move either. 10 minutes passed. My chest tightened with unease. Finally, I forced myself to get out and walk into the building. I glanced over my shoulder. She remained in her car, motionless. Inside, I couldn't shake the thought, why is she watching me? The following day at work, I confided in my coworker, Darren. There's this woman, I told him quietly during lunch. She showed up at my apartment, said someone tried to break into my car. But now she keeps parking in the lot and just sitting there. That's weird, Darren frowned. Do you know her? Number, never seen her before last week. You think she's like, stalking you? I hesitated. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it feels off. Darren leaned closer. Listen, if it happens again, write down her plate number, and if she comes near your place, call the cops. I nodded, though part of me wondered if I was just being paranoid. 2 nights later, I stayed up late watching a movie. Around 1:30 a.m., a faint sound pulled me out of the film, the sound of my doorknob turning. My blood ran cold. I muted the television and stared. The knob jiggled again, slow, deliberate. Someone was trying to open it. I crept silently to the door and pressed my eye to the peephole. She was standing there. The same woman. I nearly gasped aloud. Why was she trying to get into my apartment? I hovered, frozen, as she stood there in silence. 30 seconds ticked by. Then, without knocking, she turned and walked down the hall. I stayed pressed against the door for a full 5 minutes before I dared move. The next morning, I asked 2 neighbors if they knew her. Both shook their heads. No idea who you're talking about. One said. That confirmed my suspicion. She didn't live here. But then why was she here? I considered telling the property manager but decided against it. What would I even say? A random woman told me someone tried to break into my car, then watched me for days, then tried my apartment door. I needed proof. The following week, coming home at dusk, I spotted her again. She was standing near the mailboxes in the lobby, pretending to shuffle through envelopes. I swallowed hard and forced myself to walk past. Hi, she said suddenly. Hi, I muttered. You get off work late, huh? Her eyes flicked over me. Yeah. You live alone, right? That question froze me. Why? I asked cautiously. She smiled faintly. Just wondering. It can be dangerous, you know. Being by yourself. I felt my skin crawl. I need to go, I said quickly, and I headed for the stairs. Behind me, I heard her voice, soft and almost playful. See you around. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the building made me flinch. I left a light on in the kitchen and sat awake until dawn. Stomach knotted. The next day, I finally called the Riverton Police non-emergency line. A dispatcher answered. Hi, I don't know if this is an emergency. I stammered. But there's a woman I don't know who keeps showing up at my apartment complex. She told me someone tried to break into my car, but now she's just watching me. She even tried to get into my apartment last night. The dispatcher asked questions, description, vehicle, times. We'll send an officer to patrol the area tonight, she said. It gave me a little relief, but not much. 3 nights later, it all came to a head. I was in bed around midnight when I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, deliberate, then scratching at my door. I shot up, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. Through the peephole, her again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? There's 2 people outside my apartment trying to get in. I whispered. One of them has been stalking me for days. Please send someone. The operator told me to stay on the line. The woman rattled my doorknob again. I know you're in there, she called softly. Why don't you let us in? We just want to talk. I pressed my back to the door, tears stinging my eyes. Minutes felt like hours. Then, faintly, I heard sirens. The footsteps retreated. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. I filed a full report, shaking as I told the officers everything. The car break-in story, the nights in the lot, the attempted entry. One officer, a tall blonde man, listened carefully. It's possible she was targeting you from the beginning. Sometimes people stage these things, pretend to warn you, then use it as a way to get closer. Do you think she'll come back? I asked, voice trembling. We'll increase patrols around here, he said. In the meantime, don't answer your door for anyone you don't know. And if you see her again, call us immediately. I nodded numbly. It's been 2 weeks since that night. I haven't seen her car, haven't heard the footsteps. Sometimes I convince myself it's over. Other times I find myself staring at the peephole, heart hammering, certain I'll see her face again. I don't know who she was, or what she wanted. All I know is, for the first time in my life, I don't feel safe in my own home, and I don't know if I ever will again. I never thought the summer I came back home from college would leave me with nightmares I still carry to this day. I was 19 at the time, having just finished my freshman year at East Haven University. I had moved back into my parents' house in Brookdale, a quiet suburban town that seemed safe on the surface. Tree-lined streets, kids riding bikes, neighbors waving to one another on evening walks. Nothing about Brookdale screamed danger. My parents were thrilled to have me home for the summer. I was their only child, and after nearly 9 months of being away, my mom especially was eager to cook for me, sit down and watch television together, and hear all about my dorm life. To keep myself busy and to make some money, I got a job at Value Mart, a local retail store about 10 minutes from our house. It wasn't glamorous work. I was mostly a cashier, sometimes working the returns desk, but it was stable, and it gave me spending money. At that time, my life felt normal, boring even. My biggest concerns were juggling shifts, figuring out what books I wanted to read before the fall semester, and spending time with my old high school friends when they were around. But that summer took a turn, and it all started with something so small, so easy to ignore an Instagram message. It was late one night in June. I was lying on my bed scrolling through my phone, half watching a Netflix show on my laptop. My notifications buzzed, and I saw a message request on Instagram. It was from someone named Rick Saunders. I didn't recognize the name, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the profile. The page was set to public. The guy looked older, at least mid-32nd, maybe 40. He had a few selfies, one in sunglasses, another at a gym. Not many pictures with friends, mostly just him. The message just said, "Hi." That was it. No context, no explanation. I rolled my eyes. I'd had random men message me before, and I always ignored them. I didn't reply. The next day, I got another message from him. "Hi, how are you?" Again, I ignored it. By the third message, another, "Hi," I was annoyed. Who keeps trying after being ignored twice? I hit block and thought, that's the end of it. I was wrong. The very next day, I saw a friend request on Facebook. It was him, Rick Saunders. Jesus, I muttered under my breath, declining it immediately. I thought about blocking him there too, but I figured maybe declining would send the message. Later that night, when I logged into Facebook again, my stomach dropped. Rick had liked nearly 10 of my posts, some from years ago. Even creepier, he had left comments on old photos. One of me at prom with friends, one of me at a high school football game. He wrote things like, "So beautiful. You should accept my request. I just want to get to know you." My skin crawled. I deleted the comments, blocked him immediately on Facebook too, and told myself, now it's really over. But I was wrong again. A few days later, I was at work at Value Mart. I was on register duty, ringing up customers. I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon. Not too busy. A man walked up to my register with no items. He just stood there. "Hi," he said. I looked at him, confused. He was tall, maybe 6'1", stocky build, shaved head. And then it clicked. His face. The same face I'd seen on Instagram. My chest tightened. Can I help you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Why do you keep blocking me?" "On Instagram. On Facebook." "I'm a nice guy, you know." My stomach dropped to the floor. This wasn't some random stranger across the country. He was here. In Brookdale. In front of me. "I don't know you," I said firmly, lowering my voice so other customers wouldn't overhear. "Please don't come here again." His expression shifted, first confusion, then irritation. "What's your deal?" "I'm just trying to talk to you." "I'm working," I said coldly. "Please leave." He lingered for a moment, staring at me, before finally muttering, "Fine." Then he walked out. I stood there, my hands trembling as I scanned the next customer's items. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself maybe he'd gotten the message. But less than a week later, he came back. This time he didn't approach me. He just walked slowly up and down the aisles, pretending to browse. But every so often I caught him glancing in my direction. He stayed for 30 minutes without buying a single thing. I couldn't focus on customers. My pulse raced the whole time, my palms sweaty on the register scanner. When he finally left, I went straight to my manager. "Tom, there's this guy," I told him, trying not to sound panicked. "He's been messaging me online, and now he's coming into the store. He just lingers, doesn't shop. He creeps me out." Tom frowned. "Do you want me to call security next time he shows up?" "Yes, please," I said. "I don't want him here." "All right," Tom said firmly. "If he comes back, you let me know right away." That gave me a bit of comfort. For a while, things were quiet. A few days later, I worked the closing shift, getting home around 8 p.m. My parents were out for the evening, so the house was quiet. I made myself dinner, showered, and changed into pajamas. By 9 p.m., I was in my bedroom scrolling on my phone. Then knock, knock, knock. I froze. Slowly, I walked into the living room and peeked through the window. It was him, Rick, standing on my porch. My stomach dropped so fast I nearly vomited. My brain went blank except for one thought. How does he know where I live? I backed away from the window, grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my house, I whispered. He's been stalking me online, at my job. He's here now. He's at my door. The operator kept me calm, telling me to stay on the line, go somewhere safe, and wait for officers. I went back to my room, locked the door, and crouched on the floor with my phone clutched to my ear. For 10 long minutes, I listened, heart pounding as the knocking stopped. Then silence, until I heard movement outside. In the backyard, my breath caught in my throat. The operator's voice, "Stay calm. Officers are almost there." Then, faintly, I heard footsteps crunching against gravel. A hand, rattling at the back door. I bit down on my lip to keep from sobbing. Finally, red and blue lights flashed through my curtains. I heard voices shouting, the sound of someone being tackled. When the police knocked and announced themselves, I nearly collapsed in relief. They found Rick in the backyard, trying to open a window. I gave the officers my full statement. I explained about the Instagram messages, the Facebook harassment, how he'd shown up at my job. Rick was arrested that night. One of the officers told me, "You did the right thing calling us. Who knows what could have happened if you hadn't." My parents were horrified when they came home and heard everything. For weeks afterward, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every time I worked a shift, I scanned the parking lot before walking to my car. A restraining order was filed, and Rick was ordered to stay far away from me. I haven't seen him since, but even now, years later, I still double-check my locks at night. I still feel uneasy when I get random messages online, and I still think about that summer, the summer when just a DM turned into something far darker. I thought it was just my imagination. I never considered myself the kind of person who attracts trouble. If anything, I've always lived a pretty ordinary life. My name is Ian Parker, I'm 30 years old, and I work as a junior analyst at a financial firm downtown in Riverton City. My life has been a rhythm of routine. I wake up at 6, get ready, commute 15 minutes into the city, work 9 hours, then drive back home to my small house in the suburbs. I've lived here for 3 years now. My neighborhood is quiet families, retired folks, the kind of place where you wave to people mowing their lawns or walking their dogs. I liked that predictability. Stability. Nothing really changed, but that routine was exactly what made me so vulnerable. Because when someone started following me, I didn't notice at first. It began on a Tuesday. The workday had been long, spreadsheets and meetings dragging endlessly. By the time I clocked out, I just wanted to get home, heat up leftovers, and zone out to some dumb Netflix series. Traffic out of the city was the usual stop-and-go chaos. Closer to home, the roads opened up and I slipped into autopilot. I turned onto Lakewood Drive, heading into my neighborhood, when I noticed something strange. A silver sedan was behind me. At first, nothing about it stood out, but when I turned onto Cedar Lane, the sedan turned too. When I slowed to make the sharp right onto Willowbrook Street, it slowed too. I frowned, glancing into my rearview mirror. Through the glass, I caught a glimpse of the driver. A woman with blonde hair, big sunglasses covering half her face. Coincidence, I muttered to myself. Plenty of people lived in the neighborhood. I was just being paranoid. I pulled into my driveway. The sedan rolled past, though slower than normal, before continuing down the street. Something in my gut twisted. The next day, Wednesday, it happened again. As I drove home, I noticed the same silver sedan in my mirror, several cars back in traffic. I told myself it wasn't the same car. It couldn't be. But the closer we got to my neighborhood, the more obvious it became. Every single turn I made, she made. By the time I reached Willowbrook Street, my chest felt tight. Instead of turning onto my street, I circled the block. The sedan followed. "Okay, this is real," I whispered, gripping the wheel tighter. I eventually pulled into my driveway again. Just like the day before, the car cruised past, slowing slightly, then continuing on. That night, I stood by the window for hours. Blinds cracked just enough for me to see out. Every time headlights glowed on the street, my stomach clenched, but nothing happened. Thursday, same thing. By now, frustration boiled inside me. Why was she doing this? What did she want? This time, when I got near my neighborhood, I pulled over on the shoulder of a quiet street. The sedan slowed behind me. For a moment, it looked like she was going to pull over too. Then, suddenly, the car swerved back into the lane and sped off, disappearing around a bend. I sat frozen, heart racing. Maybe that was it. Maybe she was just trying to spook me. Maybe it was over. But I was wrong. Friday, it happened again. As soon as I saw that silver sedan in my mirror, a cold dread filled my stomach. I gritted my teeth. Not this time. Near the same stretch of road, I pulled over again. But this time the woman didn't drive off. She pulled over too. Both our cars sat idling, the late evening quiet pressing in. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. Finally, I shoved the door open. I wasn't going to let this keep happening. As soon as I stepped out, I froze. 2 rear doors of the sedan opened. 2 large men stepped out, both tall, broad, with shaved heads and hard expressions. They didn't say a word, just stared at me across the asphalt. A bolt of fear shot through me. "Shit," I hissed, diving back into my car. I slammed the door shut, jammed the key, and floored the gas. In my mirror, I saw the men sprinting back to their car. Within seconds, headlights blazed behind me as they gave chase. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being followed by the same car for 4 days in a row. There's a woman driving and 2 men just got out. They tried to, I don't know what they were trying to do. Stay calm, sir. Where are you located right now? I rattled off the cross street, my voice breaking. We have officers en route. Keep driving. Don't stop. But just as she said that, the sedan suddenly slowed and turned down a side street, vanishing into the distance. I kept driving until I saw the flashing red and blues of a patrol car. I pulled over and explained everything to the officers. My voice trembled as I gave the description. Silver sedan, blonde woman with sunglasses, 2 large men, but without a license plate number. Without proof beyond my shaken words, there wasn't much they could do. We'll keep an eye out, one officer said, but it might just be some idiots messing with you. Idiots? My hands were still trembling. Saturday morning I tried to shake it off. Maybe they'd gotten scared off after I called the cops. Maybe that was the end. I leashed up my dog, a golden retriever named Benny, and went for a walk to clear my head. The sun was out. Kids were playing in yards. Birds chirping, it felt almost normal. Almost. I walked toward the small park a couple blocks away. As I rounded the corner, I froze. 2 men were walking down the sidewalk toward me. Even from a distance, I recognized them. The same 2 men from the sedan. My blood ran cold. They hadn't disappeared. They knew where I lived. And now, they were here. I didn't wait to see what they would do. I yanked Benny's leash and sprinted back toward my house, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My dog galloped beside me, confused but keeping pace. I didn't look back. When I finally slammed my front door shut, chest heaving, I peeked out the window. Nothing. No men. No sedan. Just silence. And that was the last time I ever saw them. Weeks have passed since then. I haven't seen the silver sedan again. No strange men. No blonde woman in sunglasses. But the fear hasn't gone away. Every time I drive home, I check my mirrors obsessively. Every time headlights appear behind me, my chest tightens. I don't know who they were or what they wanted, but I do know one thing. It wasn't just in my imagination. I never thought much about walking alone at night. I had grown up in small towns where walking meant waving at neighbors, cutting through quiet streets, and not thinking twice about being out after dark. But things changed when I moved to the city for work. My job wasn't anything glamorous. I worked as a receptionist at a mid-sized insurance office. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid my bills, and with rent prices, I couldn't afford to be picky. My apartment was in a brick building on the east side of Riverton. The neighborhood was old, but not terrible. Some blocks were nice. Others had broken streetlights and spray-painted walls. It was a city, after all. My commute wasn't far, 15 minutes walking each way. I didn't have a car, and I told myself the daily walk was good exercise. At first, I liked it. I liked how I could grab a coffee on the way in, how I could put in my earbuds, listen to music, and just exist in the flow of people moving along the sidewalks. But at night, the walk felt different. Cold, empty, especially when my shift ran late. It was a Thursday. I remember because my boss, Sharon, had dumped an extra load of paperwork on me with that fake smile she always wore. By the time I left the office, it was close to 11 p.m. The city was quieter, not empty, but quieter. A couple of people smoking outside bars, a homeless man curled up by the bus stop, cars rolling by every now and then. I was halfway home, walking past a row of closed shops, when I felt it, that sudden prickle at the back of your neck when you're not alone. I turned casually, not wanting to seem paranoid, and that's when I saw him. A man, far back, maybe 100 feet, walking in the same direction. Nothing unusual about that. People walk home at night all the time, but something about him was off. He wore a black hoodie with the hood up, hands shoved in his pockets, head tilted down. He wasn't close enough for me to see his face. He wasn't rushing, just walking steadily. I told myself I was overthinking. I always did that. I turned back and kept walking. 5 minutes later, I rounded a corner, passing a laundromat with its fluorescent light buzzing above the door. I heard footsteps behind me. Not right behind me, but closer. I glanced again. Same man. He turned the same corner I had. I told myself, coincidence. He just happens to live in the same direction. Don't be dramatic. But then, 2 blocks later, I turned again, this time onto a narrower street. My apartment was 3 blocks ahead. He turned too. That's when my chest tightened. I sped up, pulling my coat tighter around me. I didn't want him to know where I lived. Panic bubbled in my stomach. I spotted an alley to my left and took it quickly, trying not to run. My boots crunched against the grit of broken glass, scattered on the pavement. I slipped out the other end of the alley and darted across the next street. My heart pounded as I walked fast, almost jogging, eyes flicking to every shadow. When I glanced back, I didn't see him. Relief washed over me. Maybe he wasn't even following me at all. Maybe I just imagined everything. I reached my building, hurried inside, locked the door, and leaned against it, exhaling hard. A week later, it happened again. This time I wasn't out as late. It was maybe 9:30 p.m. More people were out walking, cars at stoplights, a group of college kids laughing too loud on the corner. But there he was again. The same hoodie, same posture, same distance behind me. My stomach dropped. He made the same turns I did. Not right on my heels, but always there. Always just close enough. I whispered under my breath, "Number. No way this is a coincidence." My hands were clammy. I didn't even have anyone to call. My family was back in another state, my friends busy with their own lives. Once again, I pulled my trick. I sped up, turned a sharp corner, darted through an alley, and popped out on a different street. My pulse thundered in my ears. By the time I got home, I hadn't seen him again, but my hands were still shaking when I slid my key into the lock. That night, just as I was settling into bed, my phone rang. I frowned at the screen. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Silence. No, not silence. Breathing. Slow, heavy breathing. Who is this? I asked sharply. No reply. Just that low, rhythmic sound of someone's breath, like they were standing right behind me. My skin prickled. This isn't funny. The call ended. I sat frozen in bed, clutching my phone, staring at the shadows in my apartment. The next few nights, I avoided walking. I took a cab home, even if it was expensive. The drivers never seemed to notice anything unusual. But the phone calls continued. Always late at night. Always that breathing. I blocked the number. Another one called. Same thing. It was him. It had to be him. I started sleeping with my lights on. One night, I confided in a coworker named Daniel. "Hey, you look like crap," he said as we were closing up. "Thanks," I muttered. "No, seriously, you okay?" I hesitated before answering. I think someone's been following me. Like, on my way home. Twice now." His eyebrows shot up. "You're not joking?" Number, and then I've been getting these phone calls. Just breathing. Nothing else. Nothing. Holy shit, that's not good. He leaned against the counter. "You should call the cops." "And say what?" "That a guy in a hoodie might be following me and someone breathes into the phone. They'd laugh me out of the station." "Still, document it. You don't want this to escalate." 2. One night, I was almost home when I made the mistake of glancing back. He was there, closer than ever. My stomach dropped to my knees. I panicked. I sprinted, my bag slapping against my side. I cut through the alley, the same escape route, but this time I heard it, footsteps pounding after me. He was running. I burst out onto another street, heart in my throat. A car passed, headlights blinding me. I darted across, nearly tripping, and didn't stop running until I reached my building. I fumbled with the keys, shoved the door open, and slammed it shut behind me. I stood there, chest heaving, listening. For a moment, I swore I heard footsteps outside, but when I peeked through the peephole, no one was there. That was the last straw. I couldn't do it anymore. Within a month, my job transferred me to a different city. A blessing in disguise. I packed up everything and left Riverton without telling anyone besides work. The phone calls stopped. The man never appeared again. Maybe he didn't know I moved. Maybe he didn't care once I was gone. But to this day, I still remember those footsteps behind me, that steady breathing on the other end of the phone, and the way his shadow followed me through the city streets. Sometimes, even now, when I'm walking home in my new city, I catch myself glancing back, half expecting to see that hooded figure in the distance, waiting, watching, following. I never thought much about living alone until everything went wrong. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a modest single-story house on the edge of Brookhaven, a mid-sized city in Ohio. The neighborhood isn't bad. It's one of those in-between places where families with kids live right next to college students renting cheap houses. People are usually out walking their dogs, kids are riding bikes in the evenings, and there's always traffic from the main road a few blocks over. I bought the house 2 years ago because it was all I could afford after saving for years working my office job. I've always been the type who loves plants. Gardening relaxes me. My front yard is small, but I built a little flower bed by the fence, planted marigolds, lavender, and a couple of roses. Sometimes neighbors would wave to me when I was outside trimming or watering. That was one of my favorite parts of living here. It felt normal, safe. That illusion broke in the middle of summer last year. It started so casually that I brushed it off. One Saturday afternoon, I was kneeling in the yard, wearing my gloves, pruning shears in hand, trimming the roses. I remember it was warm, cicadas buzzing, the smell of cut grass in the air. That's when I noticed a man walking by. He didn't stand out much at first, tall, maybe in his late 30s, dark hair, baseball cap. Lots of people walk dogs or take evening strolls here, so nothing unusual. Except, he didn't have a dog, and he wasn't carrying groceries. He was just moving slowly down the sidewalk, glancing around like he was looking for something, but not in a hurry. I didn't think much of it. I nodded politely, but he didn't nod back. Our eyes met for a second before he looked away and kept walking. 10 minutes later, though, I saw him again. This time he was coming from the opposite direction, still without a dog or bag, still wandering. Strange, I murmured to myself, clipping a stem. When he passed a third time, my stomach tightened. His pace was slow, deliberate, and the way he turned his head toward my yard, it wasn't casual. It was like he was checking on me. But after that, he didn't come back that day. I shook it off, told myself maybe he was just exercising. A few days later, I was back outside, watering the flowers, when I saw him again. This time was different. He stopped. He didn't just walk by, he froze on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, staring directly at me. I held the watering can midair. Hi?" I said cautiously. He stepped forward, right to the edge of my property. "Hey," he said flatly. His voice was low, scratchy, like he didn't use it often. "Do you live around here?" I asked, uneasy. "Yeah," he muttered. "I'm a neighbor." "Oh." I forced a smile. "Well, nice to meet you." There was this long pause. He just stood there, eyes fixed on me. Then he suddenly said, "All right, bye," and turned, walking down the street again. I blinked, baffled. The whole interaction was off. People around here are usually friendly, but his tone had no warmth. And why walk up to me just to say that? That night, when I lay in bed, the conversation replayed in my head. My gut told me something was wrong. But again, I ignored it. Over the next week, I saw him several more times, always while I was outside. Sometimes he just walked by. Sometimes he slowed down. Once, I could have sworn he was holding his phone up. But when I glanced again, it was gone. One evening, I mentioned it to my friend Rachel when she stopped by. "There's this weird guy who keeps walking past my house." I told her as we sat on my porch with iced tea. Rachel frowned. Describe him. I did. Doesn't sound like anyone I know around here. Have you asked other neighbors? Not really, I don't want to seem paranoid. Rachel leaned closer. Listen, I'm not saying he's dangerous, but if your gut says something's off, trust it. Just be careful, okay? I nodded, though at the time I thought I was overreacting. Then came the night everything changed. It was late 2:45 a.m. I was asleep when a faint sound jolted me awake. At first, I thought it was the wind rattling the window, but then I heard it again. A soft scraping noise. I froze, heart hammering. The sound was coming from the living room, the back window. I slipped out of bed and padded to my bedroom doorway. That's when I heard it. A quiet, deliberate crack. The sound of glass fracturing. My blood ran cold. Someone was breaking in. I slammed my bedroom door shut and locked it. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone breaking into my house, I whispered, crouching by the far corner of the room. Please send help. The operator asked for my address. I rattled it off, barely able to breathe. Then footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. They creaked across my living room floor. I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep quiet. My heart was pounding so loud I swore he could hear it. The steps came closer, into the hallway, toward my room. The door handle jiggled. I nearly screamed, but the lock held. For a moment, silence. Then the footsteps retreated. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was leaving. But no. A few minutes later, they came back. Slower this time, deliberate. He stopped outside my door again. I pictured him standing there, inches away, listening. Then suddenly the footsteps hurried off. Outside, I heard sirens. Relief flooded me. The police had arrived. I stayed locked in my room until an officer shouted, "Police! It's safe now." When they escorted me outside, I saw him. The same man, hands cuffed behind his back, shoved into the back of a squad car. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt like jelly. One officer, Detective Harris, pulled me aside. "Do you know him?" I shook my head violently. He said he was my neighbor, but he's not. Harris interrupted grimly. "Name's Daniel Mercer. Lives in Dayton. That's 40 minutes away." My stomach flipped. Then, why was he here? The detective sighed. "We'll explain more tomorrow. But he's been watching you. For weeks." The next day, I went to the station. They had gone through Mercer's apartment. What they found made me want to vomit. Dozens of photos of me. Some from my public Facebook and Instagram. But others were taken outside my house. While I was gardening. While I was sitting on my porch. Even blurry shots through my windows at night. Detective Harris slid one across the table to me. "Recognize this shirt?" Time. It was me kneeling in the dirt, watering can in hand, taken without my knowledge. Tears welled in my eyes. Oh my God. "Listen," Harris said gently. "You did the right thing calling us right away. If you hadn't locked that door." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. It's been months since then, and I still struggle to sleep. Every creak in the house makes my chest tighten. I bought cameras, reinforced my doors, even adopted a dog. But the worst part isn't the break-in. It's the weeks leading up to it. The times I brushed off my gut instinct. The times I told myself not to be paranoid, because he had been watching me all along. Not just a stranger passing by. Not just a man out for a walk. A stalker. And if the police hadn't arrived when they did, I might not be here writing this.